Do you know anyone so immoral as to protest the funeral of a fallen soldier? Well, the Westboro Baptist Church is that immoral, because that's what they do. Plus, they protested funerals of gay people and even planned to protest outside the funeral of that 9-year-old shot in the Tucson shootings. Now, last week, the Supreme Court said Westboro Baptist Church has a First Amendment right to do so. Is there anything to grieving families from these protests? A Democratic congressman from Maryland has a plan. Congressman Depp Ruppersberger joins us. Good evening. And I suppose, they do have a First Amendment right, but that doesn't mean that they can't be outfoxed.
Well, you know, Greta, I, like many Americans, are very upset at the outrageous conduct of this, if it is a church, whatever it is, that would really demean our men and women who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, who lost their lives. Their family are grieving, mothers, fathers, wives, kids. And it's just
they're the
really
worst.
upsetting.
They're horrible people. They're just horrible people.
But, you know, we still do have a Constitution. And I'm a lawyer. And I read this article, and the case, the Snyder case that just came out, he's from Maryland. He was a Marine from Maryland who was killed in Iraq. And when the case came out, I was very upset about it, as I think most Americans were. And then I'm thinking as a lawyer, but we do have to follow the Constitution, and we have to protect First Amendment rights. That's what our men and women are fighting for our liberties. So I decided, and I got with a team of lawyers, and I have introduced a bill that I believe is constitutional and will deal with this issue of this group of people, the Westboro Baptist Church, and to make sure that the family, friends, and of these deceased heroes can have dignity and will not be upset by that.
So, as I understand the bill, looking at it, is that they can still protest, but they can't protest a few hours before the funeral, a few hours after the funeral, and within an area close proximity to the funeral.
What my bill says is very simple and basic. It says you can't protest 5 hours before the funeral or until 5 hours after the funeral. It also says that any protest in a military funeral, whether it's in a church or a graveyard, has to be at least 2,500 feet from that location. Now, I did my research, and there was a Supreme Court case that came out in 1984. And in this case, it talked about the First Amendment right, but it also talked about the government being able to have the authority to dictate or to at least manage the time and place of protest, but not to deal with the content of free speech. And that's exactly what my bill does. And
I, like you, have an appreciation for the First Amendment. And actually, I've always been so proud that we could have protests in this country. Right. It's so different than other countries where, you know, the government might come down and hit you over the head or even do worse. And you know, and yet it's so unthinkable that people could be. I mean, aside from the constitutional issue, what would possess someone to do that? You know, I mean, really, it's like, that's the worst.
It's despicable. And under the name of God and the lack of sensitivity, I think a comment was made after this. One of the individuals knew that I put in this bill that, well, I don't care about the Snyder, this Marine that was killed, and because he's in hell. I mean, this is the type of attitude in mind they have. But whatever, they're Americans. So my bill is constitutional, and I believe it'll pass the constitutional muster. But we now will not have, these families will not have to deal with this. And I now have to get it passed in Congress. But I can't imagine that Republicans or Democrats will not support this bill. There's a bipartisan bill to protect our troops, their families, and yet it's constitutional. Well,
you've always been a big friend of the military. Okay. I know that you helped the military get home with all those miles. So I'm sure the military is. I'm sure the military is ecstatic and thrilled that you're still championing them. Sure. Nice to see you.
Greta, good to be here.
Okay, are Muslims being singled out, or is this an opportunity